Blog Talk Radio.
Down to sleep, lay me down. I pray my soul is mine to keep. My soul can never step outside this bed, never into all the evil. Now back from the dead.
Are you scared?
He's here.
The calling hours.
When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
They will say that I have shed innocent blood. What's blood for, if not for shedding?
Episode 52 of the Calling Hours Horror Podcast. It is I, your host, the Head Undertaker, the Dead Man Michael Jones of HorrorSociety.com and Living Dead Magazine. And speaking of Living Dead Magazine this evening, as many of you know, I'm one of the writers for that magazine, and this evening we're going to do a special. And the special is going to be on the writers of Living Dead Magazine. We're going to have several of the different writers on this evening to discuss the publication, how the magazine came about, and the upcoming Living Dead Magazine Convention that's going to be going on in November of next year. I do know for sure that writers Amanda Rebholz, who's also a professional photographer, event promoter, and coordinator. She's also a published author and a marketing and branding specialist. And Jesus Figueroa, who's a full-time student, a full-time worker, and a full-time strange guy by his own words. And if we're lucky, the boss lady herself, Deanna Uutela, should be joining us as well. In our digital dismemberment DVD reviews this evening, we are going to be covering Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of Monkey Shines, as well as MCM Films DVD release of The Haunting of Pearson Place. And I have a feeling it's a movie not a lot of people have had the opportunity to see, and there's a lot going on that's good in here. Two of my more favorite actors have parts in this, Susie Lorraine and Mr. Estevez there. So we will be getting to those in a little bit. So in about half an hour, we'll do our feature interview. But before that, it is time to get into some Metal Blade music, and I have a good friend out there and a fellow compatriot in the horror genre out there, Miss Anthrax from Rivers of Gru. She seemed to like it last week when I played some of this, so we're going to continue on with it. A little bit more podcast-exclusive music. We're going to open the sit-up with some King Diamond off of the new CD, Dreams of Horror. The name of the song is Shapes of Black.
Where it all will begin.
Celia Murder off of the CD Ever Black. The song is entitled In Hell Is Where She Waits for Me. Before that, podcast exclusive King Diamond off of the new CD Dreams of Horror. The song was Shapes of Black. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to start our feature interview with some of the writers from Living Dead magazine. But before that, it's time to get into a little digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
In our first digital dismemberment spotlight for the evening, we're going to be covering MCM Films' The Haunting of Pearson Place. It's a film by Michael Marino. Give a little bit of background information. In hopes of reconnecting, Gwen and Stephen, a young, attractive, and successful couple, purchase a vacant Victorian house in a small town, intent on rebuilding its once beautiful house along with their marriage. The house at Pearson Place was once a hospice for returning soldiers from World War I. The veterans, it says screener, it's a little hard to read that, were expecting kindness upon arrival at Pearson Place, only to find that the war was still there. Or the war was heaven compared to the house, which is truly hell. Our modern-day couple intend to use the house as a B&B, but Pearson Place and its previous tenants have their own ideas, for the dead never leave. And I have to admit, haunting films have become much more of a thing these days, even more so possession films. But The Haunting of Pearson Place does a really good job, I think, with its atmosphere and the story that it tells. Again, like I had mentioned, Joe Estevez is in this movie. Susie Lorraine is in this movie, and both of them happen to be favorites of mine when it comes to genre films. And I really feel like they brought a lot to this. Now, I don't know if this has ever really officially been released. I know that I had been speaking with Michael a year or so back about a project that he might be bringing to North Carolina to work on. And he sent me this as a screener, and I felt like this was the right time to bring this film up again. It's a ghost story, but I think it kind of takes things in a little bit different light, almost to a poltergeist sense, where there's definitely more physical interaction between the ghosts and the living. Joe Estevez is incredibly creepy as not the landlord per se, but the real estate agent that sells them Pearson Place, the couple Pearson Place. And and the couple kind of has their own problems. There was kind of some speculation on the wife's part that her husband may have done something untoward with her friend, and her friend is coming with her man, and nobody really likes him, and a lot of the supernatural chicanery that goes on. There's speculation on whether or not some of the markings that the ghost leaves are being left by the boyfriend, and eventually as the film goes off, and a little bit more of a twist, the ghost is kind of picking off the members of the house one by one, making them basically spiritual prisoners in Pearson Place. Again, I think the film was incredibly done. I don't have exact numbers on a budget or anything like that, but the location is amazing. I think the camera work, the sound, everything, from a technical end is very solid. This is an excellent movie to sit down with someone who wants the scares of a haunt, but really doesn't want any blood or gore or anything really gratuitous going on. There are a few brief moments of nudity, but nothing extravagant, nothing that would make you think, oh my God, what's going on here. There is an audio commentary with the writer and director and actor Reagan Wilson, a few deleted scenes, a trailer. Like I said, I'm not 100% for sure if this is available for retail. you can go to mcmfilms.net, if that's still up, and see what the availability of this film is. But again, it's a film I think that really should be checked out, especially, Susie Lorraine's part. I don't get to see Susie in a lot of stuff. It's with everything that I cover, a lot of times it's not easy to get a hold of her films, but it was nice to see her in something. And again, with Joe was great in his role, extremely creepy and believable. As far as the film goes, I would give the film about a 7 out of 10. Again, ghost stories are not really my thing, but there was enough here to hold my fascination and my attention. Running time is about 107 minutes. So, a little bit more than your standard hour and a half, but the movie never feels like it drags, so you won't feel like you're seeing the same thing over and over and over again. As far as the special features go, there's a few interesting things on here. I would give the disc overall about a 6.5, 7 out of 10. Like I said, if there's been a more official release of this film, I would certainly go back and watch that and grade that particular disc. But a well-crafted piece of film work, well-scripted, well-acted, and you can tell that the crew was definitely a bunch of professionals. So again, if it's still running, head on over to mcmfilms.net and see if you can pick yourself up a copy of The Haunting of Pearson Place. In about 10 minutes, we're going to start our interview with the writers of Living Dead magazine. And I just heard from Deanna. She may not be able to make it in, but if not, we will continue on. There is definitely a lot that I can speak about with Amanda and Jesus just by ourselves as writers for the magazine. But we're going to go into our second digital dismemberment spotlight for the evening. This is Demonical. The name of the CD is Darkness Unbound. The song is King of All. Welcome back. You just heard some Body Farm off of the CD, The Coming Scourge. The song was entitled The Siege of the Mind. Before that, we opened up that set with Demonical. The name of the CD was Darkness Unbound. The song, King of All. But now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move into our feature interview for the evening. And what I wanted to do this evening was have on some of my fellow writers from Living Dead magazine. And I should have with me, I know I have one of them right now. Is this Amanda on with me?
This is Amanda.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you for coming on. Everyone, this is Amanda Rebholz. And we're going to be joined here in a second by Miss Mandible, because we're not 100% for sure that Miss Deanna can join us. She's kind of stuck in traffic out on the highway, so Miss Mandible is getting ready to do band practice, so as soon as she calls in, we will get her questions in right away, since she has to get off early. But, Amanda, let's start with you. Living Dead magazine, kind of tell us about how you became involved and what drew you to the magazine.
I actually met Deanna when I was at Texas Frightmare this past year. I was working the Fear Clinic table. I worked on that movie up in Ohio with Robert Englund and Thomas Dekker, and we were doing a table to promote the film at Fear Clinic, and Deanna came up and introduced herself. I think it was her first time at Texas Frightmare, and the magazine was really just kind of just finding its footing. I think they were on the second issue. And I had approached her afterward because I don't remember how we started talking. I think we Facebook friended each other. But I had some photography that I had shot out in L.A. on the set and some interesting things, and I asked her if she'd be interested. And then I ended up doing a big interview with Thomas Dekker about some of his upcoming projects, and that went in the magazine. And then since then I've had something in each issue, and so now I'm officially a staff contributor.
That's kind of how it happened for me, too. I didn't meet her at Texas Frightmare, but it's pretty much the same way. Miss Mandible, are you here with us as well?
I am.
How are you doing? It's
great.
good, and of course, Amanda's on the line with us as well. And like I said, I know you have band practice, so I'm not going to keep you long, but I definitely wanted to get you on. And part of the reason for the show was Deanna and I have discussed the possibility of maybe once every other month doing a show that is strictly with the Living Dead magazine crew, so that we can talk about, the current issue, the future issue, and just things in horror in general. So I'm trying to get everyone, introduced to the Horror Society audience. Miss Mandible, of course, I've had you on before, but kind of tell everyone how you got involved with Living Dead magazine and some of the things that you do for them.
I got involved with Living Dead. For a while, I was running my own magazine based out of the Northwest. Since I do graphic design, and I'm doing the design for the magazine currently. And I was just a huge fan of the Living Dead girls, as someone who just really likes all things creepy, anything sci-fi, horror-related. I just followed them online all the time. I was modeling a lot at the time, and had wanted to work with them, but unfortunately I wasn't quite in their area. But I still managed to make friends with them, and kind of became like an unofficial member of the Living Dead girls. And when I gave up my previous magazine, that was about the same time as Living Dead was kind of making its own magazine, and I told her I was free to help out and that I still had a passion for design and would love to put my use or my skills to their use, and that's kind of how I got involved. And,
very nice.
Yeah, I've been loving it.
Now, I believe Jesus has joined us as well. Jesus, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
We've got everybody. In case you didn't hear, Deanna may not be able to make it. There was an accident on the highway, so she's stuck in traffic, and Miss Mandible has stepped in for a few minutes so that we can get some more info out there. So I'll have you and Amanda the whole time, but I'm letting Miss Mandible here get her stuff in before she has band practice. So now,
that's fine.
One of the other interesting things that's getting ready to come up, and we'll all talk about this, but I wanted to get your opinion first, Miss Mandible, was tell us a little bit about the upcoming convention.
Well, that one, it's going to be next year. We're really hoping to do something a little bit different from the other horror conventions. This one's also going to be horror and paranormal, and right now we're in the works of creating kind of like making the logo and tossing around ideas on that front so that we have things to really build up interest. And as the designer, I've actually been getting a lot of feedback from friends who aren't necessarily horror people, but kind of like getting their feedback on what would bring them to a convention like this. So ideally, we want this to be the biggest and best convention there could possibly be. And speak to more than one. Like, horror is, it's one thing, but it's many things. It's not really just one audience. We all have our own horrors, if you will.
Sure. I would definitely agree with that. Now, I think one of the things that's a little unique about the magazine is that while there's a great concentration of the staff out west, we are kind of spread around the country. Would everyone like to tell, you don't have to say your address or anything, but, like I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. Where are you guys, and what do you think each of you bring to the magazine that sets it apart from, like a Fangoria or a Rue Morgue magazine and stuff like that? And whoever wants to go first.
Yeah. I'll go first.
Okay.
This is Miss Mandible for anyone listening. I'm from the Seattle area. As a designer, I think one thing I bring to the magazine, or I'd like to think I bring, is that's different from other magazines, is coming out of design school over the last few years, I noticed that a lot of those magazines, like, they're super fun, but they have great designers, but they're a little bit on the dark side. And so every issue I try to challenge myself to create something that is both it's both relevant to the story that's being told, but also really captures the eye. It's not just a bunch of photos just copy and pasted into the issue, but really is thought out, especially with the backgrounds. So that's something I personally feel like I like to bring to the table. So, yeah.
I'm Amanda. I am checking in from Dallas, Texas. I think what I bring to the table is I do try to write kind of what I know. I've been fortunate enough that I came up in this genre, and I've been active in communities, and I've been doing photography and published and stuff since I was about 13 years old, and I'm 28 now. So I've made a lot of connections with people that now are kind of my friends. So it gives me a lot of insight when I'm doing an interview or something. I think it's more personable. Sometimes when I read an article like in Fangoria or Rue Morgue or some of the bigger magazines, you can tell that, it was arranged through a publicist and you're putting two people in a room that have never met and will probably never talk again. And so I think the interview tends to be very rote answers, and the questions are, what they think people want to hear. And I actually love just sitting down and having a conversation with these people and getting maybe something that, you wouldn't get if you came in with a prepared list of questions. I think that's fun. And I think Living Dead Magazine has that level of kind of personal, we come across kind of as a family, I think, and we try and treat our audience like a family where it's this very personable, small scale, you can easily reach any of us through social media, whatever. We listen and respond to feedback. We have this family thing going already. So I think that's only going to grow as the magazine does.
I would agree with that. How about you, Jesus?
I'm actually out of Los Angeles, California, so I'm here stuck in the middle of one of the entertainment capitals, What I think I bring is I have built a lot of friendships with a lot of the big studios, so I'm able to get access to bigger stars, and I also like doing a lot of the independent horror, and because independent horror to me is one of the better horror movies, I guess.
Sure.
So I think I bring a whole different taste of horror to the magazine.
See, and that to me, that was one of the things that really attracted me to the magazine. I've been writing for Horror Society for the last several years, and then have done spots in other magazines. And one of the things that I really find intriguing about Living Dead magazine is the perspective, that we all take. Not being in a major metropolitan area, Raleigh, North Carolina. There's still a lot of filming that goes on here, and with Living Dead magazine, it's really nice. Sometimes Deanna will come to us with ideas for articles, and while she helps us generate the ideas, in a lot of ways she lets us go our own way. I think everyone on the staff has a very particular style that's all their own, and I think that really helps to bring the uniqueness to the magazine. Miss Mano, before we let you go, because like I said, I know you have to do band practice and everything.
Yeah, no worries.
I think the last episode. Oh, I was going to say the last issue that we did, of course, was the Freak Show, and then we have our upcoming issue. Do you want to, before you go, do you want to kind of tell everyone what you're going to be focusing on for the new issue, and so far for the magazine, what's been your favorite piece that you've done?
Well, it's actually an interesting one. So the next issue is definitely going to we're hoping to put it out pretty much right at the very beginning of January, and so it's definitely going to be ringing in the new year. We've got an amazing cover. I can't even say what it is, but it's going to be the best so far, I think. As far as my favorite things to work on, every issue I feel like gets better and better, so that's kind of not really a fair question. As we bring in more contributors, we just get more and more momentum every issue, and it's gotten actually to the point where I think the last couple issues have doubled in size from the first few issues, which puts more on my plate, but I love it. I will say my favorite articles, it's changes from every issue, but the one column I really love working on every issue is always the Monster Makers. It's such a fun one to work with because you've just got people who pour their heart and soul. Maybe it comes from me being like an artist, so I see the handiwork that comes into each sculpture or each model, whatever it is that gets done. And so I really enjoy working on that one. And Gary, he's the one who he always does that one. And he's always a great interviewer. He has a lot of fun, you can tell, with his questions. And that's kind of, I think, what Amanda was saying earlier is the personal level. And that's something I when I used to run my magazine before, I really tried to ask not the generic questions that you can find off of their website, but the questions that we all really want to know about who they really are. So,
right.
Yeah, that's definitely my favorite column. And I just thought of something else really quick. I won't say I'm speaking on behalf of Deanna, but probably am. I was thinking about the convention, and one thing I forgot to mention is I think one of the things, again, Amanda was talking about how we're a family in the magazine. I really think one of the things we're trying to do with the convention next year is really cultivating that family feeling and letting it continue on after the convention. Because I think one of the things that people love about these conventions is that sense of belonging. It's like we're all just a bunch of weirdos and freaks who love oddball little things, but we all get along together perfectly at these events. And so I think it's not just like for networking, but it's to create friendships and family kind of at this event, and something that we can continue to cultivate for years and years and years. I know when Deanna leaves, anytime she leaves the convention, she's just always goes on and on about how wonderful it was, and I think that's something she wants to be able to give back as well. So,
well, I love it, and it's. Well, go ahead and get to band practice. I don't want to keep you. Thank you so much for coming on such short notice. And when we do the round table, we will definitely have you on.
Awesome. I'd love to be part of it.
You know it, anytime.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Take it easy, Miss Mandible.
Yes. All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye. And once again, everyone, that was Miss Mandible, one of the great people that is involved with Living Dead magazine. And now it is Jesus and it is Amanda. Guys, we're going to get into it a little bit more. Jesus, one of the things, I remember when you contacted me and said you wanted to be on the show, I asked you guys for a picture and 2 lines. And one of the lines that you sent me was, as a writer, there's not much else to do but write. Kind of talk about your perspective of writing and why you enjoy the horror genre so much in particular.
Well, I write about everything. Being here in LA, I've actually made a lot of contacts and usually write about the whole entire entertainment industry. But when I came into Living Dead magazine, it was kind of by just a strange coincidence. I started up a little column on my site called Kicking Into Kickstarter, and I found Living Dead magazine on Kickstarter. And I'm like, horror is one of my favorite genres, and I know a lot of people in that industry. I'm going to support this magazine. And I wrote about Living Dead magazine. I get the word out. And later on, I wanted to do a follow-up article, and Deanna asked me if I wanted to write a column for Living Dead magazine. So I did. And then she invited me to be...
what would you say so far?
Permanent... Huh? Excuse me?
We keep tripping. It's okay. No, go ahead. I was just going to ask you what your favorite piece has been so far that you've written for the magazine.
So far, I would say the Freak Show one for the last issue. It was so fun getting to know the cast of Freak Show, and they're very welcoming, very inviting, and the fact that they don't see themselves that as a negative thing, as being freaks, they see it as empowering, and they're trying to take the word back, so it is a positive word, you know? It's being a freak is actually being extraordinary or out of the ordinary, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No, very, very much so. I would definitely agree with you on that. Now, Amanda, for you, I mean, you got into it so early, and you've done some film work as well. You mentioned Fear Clinic. Kind of talk about where your true roots of horror came from, and with so many outlets out there, we have the internet, we have blogs, we have all of these things. I mean, what is the real hook that makes you go, yes, I've got something else to write for Living Dead magazine?
I think I didn't have a choice. I was raised, my mother and my grandfather were both enormous horror fans. And my mom was much more commercial. Like the Friday the 13th stuff. And, she made me watch Jaws when I was like 2. And, one of my earliest home videos was me in front of the TV, like freaking out in front of Little Shop of Horrors and just dancing around. And I was obsessed with that plant. But it was just one of those things, like I did not understand kind of how the magic happened, of course, because I was little, but I loved it, and I wanted more and more of it. And my grandfather was obsessed with Tales from the Crypt, and I remember, and I was tiny, but my family's corroborated the story, but basically when I was little, I thought that the opening credits, I thought that was the show, because obviously I couldn't follow the plots or whatever of each episode, but that whole opening of them coming up the staircase and the Crypt Keeper popping out and whatever, I thought that was the show. So I would stay and I'd watch the opening, and then I'd wander off while the other stuff happened. But every time I heard the Crypt Keeper's voice, I would run back into the room, and think another episode was on or another, whatever. So I from a tiny age, I wasn't afraid of monsters. I loved monsters. I always wanted more and more of it. And somehow when I got to be a teenager and I was this little misunderstood goth kid, I got in with doing photography for different bands. And when I was 15, I was able to go on tour with a couple of bands, really small, just kind of around Texas. And I would follow them from gig to gig and do photography for them. And they just thought it was adorable that I was having my little, almost famous, Cameron Crowe adventure. But it kind of kept going as I got older, and it got to where, I never really outgrew it. And I think kind of everyone thought that it was. and I started getting a lot of horror tattoos, and I got involved in the Texas indie film scene through a movie called Possum Walk that two of my friends had produced, and they needed a voiceover actress to come in, and I had never done that before, but they liked my voice and knew I read out loud a lot and things like that, and I had done a lot of voiceover stuff, just various, like, podcast-type stuff. So they brought me in to do this, and I was like, I didn't know, I guess until that point, I really didn't know that it was feasible for just normal people to make a film. I really thought that you had to have millions of dollars and connections, and I was not used to these kind of backyard indie horror films that were happening, and they're happening all over Texas. I mean, down south especially, but it's this whole hotbed of filmmakers, and there's these weird little factions like the Dallas crew, the Austin crew, the Houston crew, and they don't cross over very much. There's a lot of, we get together once a year or whatever at different conventions and stuff, but each section has their own, prominent directors and cinematographers and actors and whatever, and there's not a lot of crossover. But by being introduced into that Dallas crew, I met so many amazing people and just kind of went from there and worked on several indie films here, and my boyfriend is a special effects artist who's worked on a lot of really, awesome stuff here in Texas. His one of his newer projects, Circus of the Dead, they're getting like a lot of press and a lot of attention, and they were featured actually in the last issue of Living Dead magazine, which was funny because I didn't write it. Did you
say Circus of the Dead?
Yeah.
He worked on Circus of the Dead?
He did. My boyfriend Matthew Ash. He did the effects with Marcus Cook for that movie.
Oh. We may have to arrange. We may have to arrange to have him on for me to do an interview with him, because for that issue I interviewed Billy Pond, and
right.
We know it was an absolutely. It's absolutely amazing, and what you say about the film industry out there in Texas is very similar to how it is out here in North Carolina. I mean, you have UNC Wilmington, which has the Dino De Laurentiis studios and all of that. Those are more your Hollywood productions, but then you have factions all over the state that are indie film. And Jesus, I wanted to ask you, especially since you're out there, in California, have you ever done any film work yourself? I mean, have you done effects, acting, anything like that?
I've done a lot of writing for films and rewriting. It's more what I'm into, but I've enjoyed more covering them for print or for Living Dead magazine or for other publications like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and one of the things I wanted to ask you guys is for me, very similar, to like what you said, Amanda. I pretty much grew up in it. It was always a thing for me, and I'm self-taught when it comes to effects. I never thought in the middle of Raleigh, North Carolina, I would ever get to work on a film, much less 5 of them. And I continued, to write during that whole time. But, Jesus says, writing behind the scenes, Amanda, acting and everything that you've done as well, kind of tell the listeners a little bit about how that changes your perspective of the genre as opposed to just being, kind of like you said, Amanda, an everyday person who looks at it. Because the inner workings, you see how things are done. How do you, are you more forgiving when you watch horror films because oh, well, they did that because they were losing the light, or, hey, I've been there because, the budget just didn't have the money?
It is, I can't speak for anyone else. I can only speak for me, but I will say it's very hard for me. I used to be a film reviewer, and people would send me screeners, and it was very hard for me to be objective because I would watch it like a typical audience member and say, this is crap, the acting's crap, they obviously had $50, oh my God, the blood looks horrible. And it was so easy to be critical and to tear something apart. But once you're behind the camera in any capacity, it doesn't matter what department you're in, you see these people that are usually working either for no money or for peanuts. Not a living wage in most cases. And the jobs are few and far between. They don't know when they're going to get their next gig. They're hungry for it. Everybody wants to make a movie that someone's going to love. And unfortunately, things happen that, if you don't have the money to smooth that over, or maybe you don't have the money to get the actors you want, but you have these eager young kids with no experience but will do it for free, of course your movie is not going to be this, like, Martin Scorsese masterpiece. And it's a lot easier to be forgiving when you've been on that side of the camera. I think you kind of have to learn, I guess, to roll with that chaos. But that being said, I mean, now I've actually stepped into directing shoes. I did a music video last week, and I had never directed before, but I've done, basically everything else behind the camera. And I learned from watching other people's mistakes and watching other people overcome these obstacles. And so when I was on set, I did as much preparation as possible to have foresight and say, okay, if that happens, let's have a plan B. Or if this actor, gets stuck in traffic and we're late, what can we shoot until they get there? You have to have a contingency plan, especially when you're an independent doing anything. I mean, I've seen Matthew be on set and he's prepped 3 effects and some director comes to him and says, I also need you to do this. And he hasn't done any preparation for that, and he has 30 minutes and what's in his kit to make it work. And it's like, you have to be prepared for that. If you're an actor, you have to be prepared for some random writer to bring you a new page and say you have 5 minutes to learn. I mean, that's just what it is. You have to think on your feet. And I think in that way, indie film is more rewarding because you don't have that cushion of like, oh, it's okay, we have reshoots and we have stunt doubles and we have, 50 million people and we have pickup shots. And you don't have that luxury. Everything has to be right the first, maybe the second time. So I think if you keep your standards high and you keep your eyes open and aware of problems and anticipate them, and you have to have a good, loyal crew that you trust. And it takes time. I mean, I've worked with so many people that can, run their mouth and talk a huge game about how great they are or whatever, but if they can't step up to the plate when the time is right, then they're not worth having on your crew. If you can build a crew that you can rely on, it's the best feeling in the world. Even if your movie never gets distribution, if it never gets out into a theater, if you're at some convention, with a table hawking it for $10, begging people to buy a copy so they can see it, it doesn't matter. You put something back into the genre that's given you so much, and just making it is so rewarding.
I agree 100%. Now, for you, Jesus, you said you did stuff on the writing end. Kind of touch on how that gives you a different perspective when you review films, when you talk to writers and directors and to people. Give us that viewpoint.
Yeah, as a writer, I did notice a lot of times, especially when you write with a couple of people around you, a writing crew, it becomes difficult to try and keep things practical. You can't do everything that you want to, especially in an indie film. There's limitations when it comes to the special effects or even post-production effects. CGI isn't always an option, so thinking about it, trying to come up with a contingency plan to how you could do it on camera instead of with special effects is completely different. Going into writing, I thought, we just write what we want to see and that's what we're going to get, but it's not the way it usually works. Usually, we have to think, okay, so we have a limited budget, and this is what we can do, this is what we can't do. And I've been working on promoting another Kickstarter this last month. It ends in 2 days. It's Muck. It's a horror film in 4K HD. And what I like so much about this project is, even though they kind of have a budget, they're doing everything practical, and Kane Hodder is their main killer. For those of you who don't know, Kane Hodder was in Friday the 13th, so he's kind of a big name, and they don't do any special effects. Everything they do is practical and on camera. And
as an effects artist, that's the way I like it. So.
Yeah. One of my first interviews, which I'm still 100% proud of and honored to have done, is Rick Baker, who did Poltergeist, who did Star Wars. And he said that my favorite quote from him was that practical effects will always have room in the movie industry, and CGI should only be used to make those practical effects perfect.
He couldn't have said it any better, and I'm definitely down with that. Yeah. Now, for me, I mean, I've been writing, for as long as I have, almost 15 years, about the same amount of time as you, Amanda. Does it ever get? Is it always still a thrill for you guys when the new magazine comes in and you see your work there in print, can you kind of talk about, what kind of a sense of accomplishment that gives you to see your hard work in the hands of other people where it can be read?
Oh, I still geek out really hard. I order multiple copies and give them to my family, and I think it's because as a little kid, you collect copies of Fangoria, or you run to the newsstands to grab the new Rue Morgue or whatever it was. But to me, and I did grow up, as a writer as well as everything else, but I've written this whole time too, and it's just those people were rock stars. They were so close to the people that I considered heroes. I couldn't imagine sitting in a room with Rick Baker or Steve Johnson or, Stan Winston or John Landis or whoever. That was insane to me that you could just go in and ask them these questions that you thought of while you were watching the movie. And I just didn't think that was anything that could happen to normal people. I thought that you had to be, again, it was like making a film. I thought you had to be connected, or you had to work in that genre, or you had to do journalism or something. So I think there's still some sense of hell yeah. Anytime you get to do an interview and you walk out of that room and you're like, yeah, I just had coffee with Freddy Krueger, whatever. You still have that feeling of surreal 8-year-old you is high-fiving you. So I still get really excited every time I see my name in print with something like that, especially Living Dead, because it comes out and it looks beautiful, and I just want to show it to everybody, and I make all my friends order copies, and
I do the same thing, so don't feel bad. I still have that fanboy mentality about it too. How about you, Jesus? How does it? What are your feelings every time that envelope comes every 2 months?
Every time I get Living Dead, I already have a frame there ready to be put in. I have one of my stories framed. I have every single issue, in a plastic, so it's in mint condition. I do geek out over it. I have had an opportunity to interview big people for other publications, but the one I've cherished the most so far has been Living Dead magazine, because it literally is a magazine written by fans for fans.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have not had the opportunity to see anything else like it.
Now, as an interesting side point.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, at the risk of sounding really, really arrogant, I just feel like if you ever get to the point where you get to do something like that and you're so blasé about it that you don't get a little bit excited, then you probably have been doing it too long and shouldn't do it anymore. Because I think even the people that have been, doing special effects or directing or whatever for 35, 40 years, they still do something every now and then that they're like, hell yeah.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a passion. It's a side of the industry that I think a lot of people kind of take for granted. Like you said, being able to have done effects now, for film, and of course my writing, a lot like you said, I revered these people growing up. Like you said, these were the rock stars, and I'm not sure what everyone's age is, but I'm 38. So when I was growing up as a kid, early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, back in those days, your special effects artists were the rock stars of the horror films. It wasn't the actors or the actresses. It wasn't the directors per se. It was, oh, shit, Tom Savini's got a new film coming out. Oh, man, Rick Baker's doing the effects for this. Oh, Greg Nicotero's doing that. It's changed a lot. Nowadays it seems like most of your films are sold on your stars, and I can see that. But, it's a change that's happened in the industry. And, like Chaz Balin and, people like that I admired, growing up reading. And, again, for Living Dead magazine, not that long ago, I got to interview Chris Alexander, who's the editor of Fangoria magazine. And, it was, in a lot of ways, it was an overwhelming experience. I'll never forget that it was almost 30 years ago to the day that the Living Dead magazine came out, that my father bought me my first issue of Fangoria magazine. And, it was on Friday the 13th, Part 4, and, I'll never forget any of that. And the thought that went through my mind after I finally got done interviewing Chris was, it's all come full circle. 30 years ago as a kid, I was reading this magazine, and here I am now, interviewing the guy that edits that magazine. So yeah, I agree with you. It's a passion. It's something that you've really got to, believe in and strive for. So yeah, to me it's always a great pride to see myself in print. But one of the other things I wanted to talk about and get your guys' opinions on, for lack of a better term, Living Dead magazine is still a growing magazine. It's still an independent magazine. And not to sound biased, but it is really one of the most beautiful and well put together magazines that you can get in the genre. Can you guys kind of talk about what you think about the aesthetic nature of the magazine as it compares to others in the genre? Whoever wants to take it first.
Yeah, I was like waiting to see if this was going to go or me. I think it's gorgeous. I agree with Jesus. I think every issue is worth framing. I think it's, graphic-wise, I think the cardstock is really nice. I know that sounds really stupid, but I've written for some that are written, on like copy paper, and the ink comes off on your hands and stuff. And part of that is, again, it's like the indie films. These are labors of love. None of us are, I speak for myself again only, but none of us are making a living off of this. And, if you do get paid for writing for a horror publication, it's not much. You get paid mostly in the perks of participating in the genre, putting something back out there or whatever. You're not usually doing it to pay off your student loan. And so when you're doing something like this, it's nice when, even though it's a grassroots campaign kind of thing and it's done by people that are also donating a lot of their time and effort and whatever for not as much, money as they maybe would like, you're still getting this top shelf product that's beautiful cardstock, full color. The issues are beautiful. They have the digital downloads available so that no matter where in the world you are, you can get a copy. I know that, like when I did the feature on Thomas Dekker, his fan club in the UK, they ordered a bunch of copies and like whatever. And when they got it, they couldn't believe like the quality of it. I was getting private messages that were just like, the photos look incredible on this paper, They were freaking out. They're actually going to take them to conventions next year and have them autographed because they thought they were so nice looking. So I think that Living Dead definitely sets a standard for independent horror magazines that, it rivals any of the big boys.
What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree with that. I completely agree with her. Being in LA, we have all these zines that are horror or music or whatever, and they're nowhere compared to what Living Dead magazine has pushed the standard to. It looks beautiful. It definitely is on a well-printed magazine. The content is great, and it's not only one-sided. We have the big budget films, and we have a small budget film, and we have everything in between. We don't concentrate on one genre or one side of it. We try to keep it equal, and we try to include as much India in there as possible.
We have such a weird cast. Everybody specializes in something.
Well, and I think that's one of the good things. That's one of the things that I really like about the magazine. When Deanna first explained the magazine to me, she goes, yes, it's a horror movie, it's a horror magazine, but it's not just about horror films or horror books. It's about the lifestyle of horror, living horror as a lifestyle all the time. And, having read several of the issues and, being able to talk with you guys, both on Facebook and on here, I do see that, and the more and more that I think about it, I think you guys were right. It is a family. We each have our specialties, but when you put all of our specialties together, you get a unique blend that you don't get anywhere else, and I really think that's an exciting thing, and it always brings something new to every issue. You might see the same writers, but you're never ever going to see the same content or it covered in the same way. Now, speaking of that, of course, we have many more issues to go as far as Living Dead goes, but if you guys had your choice, if you had a dream article, whether it be a topic or a person, what would that be?
Oh, wow. I would love to interview. Oh, wow. I've interviewed at some point in my life most of the people I've wanted to. I think I would actually, I don't think I would do an article. I think I would do one of my photo shoots, and I actually think that it would be a dream come true for me to get to shoot Clive Barker. I have admired every aspect of his work. I know him sort of, I'm not going to say on a personal level, but I've met him many times and been to his house and, whatever. But it's just like seeing his photography and his artwork and his writing and everything, he's such an inspiration to me. I would kill to get him in a studio and actually get to shoot him in some cool concept kind of spread.
Definitely. How about for you, Jesus?
I would want to go get interview Rick Baker again. Rick Baker to me is so amazing, and I would want to know more about his time doing Poltergeist. It is one of my favorite movies, and and The Exorcist. All those movies are amazing to me, and he's an amazing person. I got to talk to him once for Men in Black 2 before Maleficent came out, and he couldn't talk about Maleficent. But once this October, when he did Halloween Horror Nights, and every single time I talk to him, I'm just more amazed by the man.
I think anybody like that, they never run out of stories. You can run into them, 5 minutes later, and they have a whole new conversation ready for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's what I like the most about writing for Living Dead magazine. Everybody I've met through the magazine is just amazing people.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. One of the biggest thrills was when Deanna put me in touch with Billy Pond, and he was so amazing to do an interview with and then have him on the podcast. And you're right, you do meet some of the most amazing people doing the things that we do. For me, if I could ever have my dream interview, it's too late for that since he's passed on. It would have been Lucio Fulci, but
I thought you were going to go Dick Smith.
As an effects artist, I'd lean that way. I would love, another guy I would love to interview would be Gianotto De Rossi.
Yeah.
There was a guy, if you go back and look at it, Zombie, High Tension, you look at his non-genre stuff, but he's a guy I think that a lot of American audiences, they don't understand what a legend he is, him. I always thought it would be crazy just to have the interview would be the guy that did Necromantic. Just to pick his brain and go, man, you made a film that was so taboo breaking. I could talk to him for hours, but well, with us we have 15 minutes left. So what I wanted to ask you guys about was, we hit on the convention a little bit earlier in conversation, and the first thing I'm going to ask you guys is are you guys planning on going to the convention in November?
I wanted to try. I actually just found out a few weeks ago that my boyfriend and I are expecting a baby in July, which is our first. Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We're very excited to spawn our little monster, but it's going to be born in July. So that's definitely going to put a little bit of a kink in my travel plans. But as of right now, I still intend to come out. Whether that means bringing the baby or if Daddy has to stay home and play babysitter, either way, I'm very involved, in helping plan the convention and getting it together. So I would love to be there to enjoy the fruits of it.
Certainly. How about you, Jesus? Are you planning on attending?
I plan on attending, and I hope that I get to help out somehow in the planning as well. I have some connections that I'm trying to talk to, see if they would like to be part of or maybe sponsor it. Hopefully it is as big of a convention as Deanna wants it to be. I really hope so, and I hope it becomes an annual thing.
Oh, I think it will too. I'm doing my best to talk to the people at Horror Society, the other side I write for, because I definitely feel like it's, we love promoting Living Dead magazine on the site. Of course, I bring them up all the time here on the podcast, and when the new issues come out, I always put out, the pressers and stuff. And I certainly plan on attending as well. And Amanda, I hope you do show up, because this year I'm going to start doing some monthly photo shoots, and I would love to do some work with some of the other people from the magazine. I've got some models lined up and things like that. So I think it would be cool to do a collaborative effort like that for the magazine and do something special. And I'm never opposed to traveling. Even though Dallas, even though I'm a Washington Redskins fan, it would be blasphemous for me to be stepping on the Texas soil. But at least it's not Oklahoma, since I had to do Army training.
I don't know jack shit about the Cowboys, so you're safe with me.
That makes me feel so much better. I don't have to worry about someone trying to kill me when I'm in the state.
Absolutely not.
So.
I don't even know who we're supposed to be mad at right now.
Well, with this convention, Amanda, should you be able to go, and Jesus, with you going, what aspect of it are you looking forward to the most? Are you looking at it from the journalistic standpoint of, oh man, I'm going to be able to meet these actors and actresses, and we're going to be able to set up interviews and shoots, or are you more interested in the merchandise aspect of being able to go and get things, that you collect, movies, posters, whatever, or is it the fan interaction? What is it that you guys would be looking forward to the most while you're there? I mean, short of meeting everyone from the staff.
Right. That's the most fun for me, is meeting the people, making the little local family. I feel like I go to so many conventions, and I mean, even if it's just Texas Frightmare, they bring in, 70 guests a year at least. So I feel like meeting the celebrities, even though it's exciting, it's sort of impersonal. Even the ones I much prefer the time when they're hanging out at the bar and just chilling after the convention than the whole going to their table and getting things signed or whatever. And my bucket list of who I have to meet is smaller and smaller every year. But I think that the only purpose of these conventions for anyone is memories, period. And whether that's someone who's always wanted to meet, Norman Reedus, waiting in line for 8 hours to meet Norman Reedus. If that's what that's their goal, and that's what they do, and they carry that with them forever. I think being able to give that to someone is awesome. So for me, it's just the memories you make, whatever they are. For me, half the time it's getting drunk in the bar with my friends that there's not a celebrity in sight. It's the friends that I've made at the convention. So I feel like at this kind of convention, because it is horror and paranormal, and you have a varied crowd, and it's going to be pretty much nobody that I've ever met before, I'm looking forward to coming out and meeting a bunch of new people and just getting out of my comfort zone and expanding my horror family by a whole new branch. Definitely.
How about for you, Jesus?
Yeah, I definitely want to go meet the staff, because all you people seem amazing to me, and I like being in the group, because everybody is always posting and interacting, and I want to see what you guys are in person, how you are, and have fun. I want to make sure that this convention is fun for everyone. That's, like she said, the memories are the most important part, and I want to be a part of that.
I mean, I do too. I mean, one of the only conventions that I've ever really done was here in Raleigh, and it really wasn't even a horror convention. It was they call it Animazement, and you have a lot of the cosplay and stuff that goes on, and I'm definitely interested in going and checking it out. I definitely would love to do a. See, you have to bring your boyfriend, Amanda. I think it would be cool to work on some kind of collaborative effect with him. You do a makeup panel or something,
he's so great. And, then we got to travel with the whole kit. It's a whole thing, No, he's wonderful. He's working on a couple of projects right now, and we'd actually just spent the weekend with Billy Pond. He was in town for a film festival in Dallas, and we talked about circus and some upcoming things that Billy's got going on. And Matthew's just always trying to stay busy down here, so it depends on what he's got going on next year, too. But he's fairly in demand. Good effects artists down here. There's a small pool of them, and they all work together and share on the projects and stuff. So he's got a group here that he works with that are pretty awesome. So I would love to bring him out, hopefully, and get to introduce them to some people up there too.
Well, one of the things that I'm hoping to do, and I'm going to talk to Deanna about it, is part of what I want to do is travel to some of the other cities and locations where members of the staff live and go and find horror-themed things to do in that area, whether they be photo shoots or a set visit or things like that. Because like I said, I think it's what I'm trying to do with this show again is to introduce you guys to the audience at Horror Society. We have almost 100,000 followers on Facebook, tons of people on Twitter. We get a lot of following, and I really want people to really see what this magazine is about and what, the people who write for the magazine are about. Now, as far as that goes, like I said, of course, we have many more issues and many more stories to tell as the years go on with the magazine. But what are some of the things you guys are hoping to see? Is there a themed issue you guys would like to see? Are there certain films or certain elements that we haven't covered in the magazine yet that you guys would like to see?
I think it would be awesome to do an issue that's just gratuitously obsessed with effects and just do a ton of different features about the big makeup artists and talk to the different effects houses that are working currently and see kind of how they're adapting to the shift from, CGI and practical, and just see how they're keeping afloat in this film economy. And I think that would be really awesome to talk to some of the really old people that are still working. And by old, I mean, like, obviously the ones that started out with, like, the first, puppeteering and the ones that were really pioneers in their day. And then talk to some of the really up-and-coming new kind of visual artists and just see how the difference in the medium has changed.
Well, I mean, I would definitely be down for something like that. What about you, Jesus? What would you like to see in the magazine that we haven't really done yet?
I'm not sure. I mean, that's a really tough question because there's so much about the horror genre that I like. I like the writers because it is really hard to come up with a believable story in the horror genre and keep it, grounded. So I'm always up for writers because they're amazing to me, and it's awesome seeing all these films, especially the indie films, that go out on a limb and make you believe just the most bizarre stuff. Or even, I like the idea of special effects because those come up for really good photos. And I'm pretty sure special effects people have the most amazing stories of how they got to do an effect that they never thought possible.
Oh, yeah. And I agree with you about the authors. I think it's a shame that really the only ones that ever get any accolades are the really big ones that everyone already knows about, like Stephen King and Clive Barker and to some extent Joe Lansdale. But I feel like there are hundreds and hundreds of amazing authors that go totally, unsung. And I have a lot of friends that are in, like, the bizarro horror genre, like Edward Lee and Brian Keene and people like that. And I feel like if you go to Barnes & Noble and you don't see this giant display of their new work, it just gets overlooked, and it's sad because they're wonderful additions to the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I would definitely agree with that. I get, with Horror Society and everything and the podcast, as well as Living Dead magazine, the sheer amount of people that send me stuff to cover, it's a shame that you can't highlight everybody. It's you try to spread it around as much as you can, but I like the concept of both of those, both the writers and the effects artists. I could definitely get behind doing something like that. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left, and it's very obvious, being writers, being people in the genre, that your love of everything horror is very evident. One of the things I wanted to ask you guys is what do you think is one of the most, what's the most pressing thing going on in our industry right now? A couple of years back, the hot button issue was torture porn, stuff like that. What do you guys think the major news lines are right now in our genre?
For me, I would say it's these weird, I don't even know what you want to call them, sort of these cash cow movies that people are putting out that they're like totally soulless. Whether that means it's sequel number 97 of some franchise that everyone's already given up on it, but they think people will still come see it, or a remake of something that wasn't that great in the first place. Like I'm not even talking about the remakes that I think there are remakes that definitely bring something new to the table, and I like when it's a total reinvention. Like, I loved the remake of Evil Dead because it really had nothing in common with the original. I think that's great. But when you have a movie that was some, like, horrible B movie back in, like, the 50s that was made for TV and, like, no one liked it then either, it's almost like someone bought the rights for, like, $10, and they're like, we should just remake it. People will recognize the name and come see it. And they just throw it in theaters, and there's no care. There's a terrible script. There's bad effects. There's no-name actors. And you watch it, and you're just sort of like, why? It's not even a feeling of, like, on my end, it's not anger or resentment or anything. It's just, like, puzzlement. Like, why do the studios think we're so stupid and that we'll just, like, eat whatever shit they hand us? I mean, to an extent we do, and that's why they keep doing it, but...
How about you, Jesus? What do you think is the most pressing issue in our genre right now?
I think she's right about it. I mean, these horrible remakes keep on popping up everywhere. There is, like, no need for some of these films because, like she said, they weren't good back in the day, and they're definitely not being made good now. And also, all these people who are taking the horror genre way too far. On Halloween, there was that threat in, was it Wisconsin, for people who were going to purge the night.
Right.
You know, horror is a genre you could enjoy, but when you take it to an extreme like that, it just becomes sad, and it demonizes the whole genre for one movie or one person who tries to go beyond what they should be doing.
I think the danger with stuff like that, though, and I mean, that's a whole conversation on its own, but I think to an extent, like with the Purge movies, they're kind of trying to do like what Romero was doing with the Dead trilogy, the original anyway, when he was making the political commentary and saying about the economy and the state of the world. I feel like movies like The Purge that are these political sort of charged horror films, or they're saying like, we can get away with this, or even like Hostel, talking about the tourism trade and just this bro culture. I feel like there's so much current social issues that are being brought into horror films, and I think the difference is they're trying to make a statement and say this is how the world is, but when you've got things on the news like the riots in Ferguson or just all of the craziness that's happening, it's so close to reality that these horror movies are sort of blurring the lines. And I think that, for me, like the stuff that I find the scariest is like the home invasion films and anything like that where it actually could happen. I'm not afraid of a monster out in the woods or whatever because I think that's just awesome. And I think that when you get into that visceral kind of horror that people can relate to, that's where it's sort of scary, like for real. Like it takes the horror thing away from fantasy and escapism and whatever and entertainment, and it becomes this, I don't know. I mean, it's right up there with just regular social commentary, but there's always going to be people that are going to use anything as an excuse to be incendiary.
Well, that's true. I mean, I definitely agree with that statement as well. You know, for me, you know, I still kind of look at the debate of, you know, the rating system is still a big thing for me. I'm a firm believer, you know, I worked at a Sam Goody Musicland for a while, and it was really funny. I remember getting notations from the home office, you know, if a thing has a parental advisory or if a movie's rated R, you know, you don't sell it to kids. And I'll never forget, I had a parent come in who gave their kid money and stood off to the side, an underage kid, and they came in to buy an adult CD, you know, parental advisory, and I wouldn't sell it to him. And the parent called the corporate office. Never came up to me. You know, the kid and the mother left, and you know, I got chewed out for not selling it. And I think, you know, I think we really need to start looking at our rating systems again because, you know, you look at a movie like High Tension that was supposed to be NC-17, and then you know, they changed it, but then they put out Showgirls, which was NC-17, and everyone automatically got the assumption that if a movie's rated NC-17, oh well, that means it's pornographic. It's got, you know, tremendous amounts of sex and things, and that's not what the rating is, you know, NC-17 is strictly about. You know, I think the movie theaters need to get over that whole thing of, oh, well, if we show an NC-17 rated movie, it'll hurt our business. It's just like anything else, you know. You need to enforce the rules. You know, if a person is under 18, they don't get into an NC-17 rated movie. And I think that's the point in time when you're going to see the horror movie really rise again. part of the reason that the audience is down is because everything is dumbed down for teenage audiences these days. So hopefully that's
I'll be
something that'll get worked on.
Yeah, I mean, my unpopular opinion that I fully stand by, and I think it's because I'm so annoyed every time I go to a theater now, I think if it's an R-rated movie, I don't care if you're with your parents or not, I don't feel like you should be able to go if you're under the age. You get all these kids that are like 10 that come with their older brother, and then they're disruptive and they're crazy. Or you have someone who didn't want to pay for a babysitter, so they bring their crying. I actually had someone, I went to see Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie, which, as you know, is like one of the absolute goriest. Like, it was disgusting and amazing, and Wayne Toss is a god. I would never take a child to that film, never. And, this saying someone who was raised in the horror genre. And there was a kid in front of me who had to be 2 or 3 years old that was with their parents. And this was a midnight show. But because of the law, and they were with their parents, the theater couldn't do anything. And we walked out to complain, and the theater actually said they're not breaking any laws. We can't kick them out. The kid was, like, sobbing from the opening scene with the ambulance crash. The kid was, like, in a basket case for the next hour. And the parents would not walk them out into the lobby, nothing. But the theater couldn't do anything. And I think at that point, I'm like, you know what? You're not 17. You should not be able to be in this theater. No, I don't care if you're with your parents. I don't care if you're with your brother. I don't care if someone else bought you a ticket. I want to enjoy the film as an adult.
Trust me. You and I have that same pet peeve. So, well, guys, it's been absolutely. I mean, sure. I mean, I have a 13-year-old daughter, and she knows who Jason and Freddie and all that is, but. She's seen her dad do work, so she can understand that it's not real. So,
but
I definitely have your sentiments
so much tamer than Hostel or anything like that.
Yeah, it's been a blast having you guys on. Of course, everyone knows that they can find your work in Living Dead magazine. But if people want to follow you guys on social media, websites, anything like that, you guys have anything you need to throw out there?
I am Fast Zombie Suck on Twitter. And I am also Darkroom Lament, LAMENT.com is all of my photography and what I'm doing.
Very nice. Jesus, how about you?
My blog is actually Dysfunctional, THISFUNKTIONAL.com. And I'm Dysfunctional on Twitter, Instagram, Dysfunctional LA on Facebook. That's it.
You're dysfunctional all around, huh?
Yep, dysfunctional everywhere.
Well, I'll definitely be getting with both of you. I'd love to have you both back on again. I'd like to do some collaborative work with you guys as well. Thank you so much for being on and representing the magazine the way that it should, and I'll be talking to you guys soon.
Great. Thanks for having us.
Anytime. And once again, ladies and gentlemen, we just had on writers Amanda Rebholz and Jesus Figueroa, and earlier on we had Miss Amanda on to talk about the inner workings of Living Dead magazine and the upcoming convention in November. So all of that's going to be a lot of fun. And again, Deanna, I hope everything's fine. We'll definitely have you on next time. Looking forward to all of that. Coming up in a few minutes, we're going to move on to our second digital dismemberment spotlight movie for the evening. We're going to be taking a look at Scream Factory's Blu-ray release of Monkey Shines. But before that, we're going to go into our last double shot of Metal Blade music. We're going to kick this one off with the band Job for a Cowboy off of the new CD Sun Eater. The name of the song is Buried Monuments.
you just heard another double shot of Metal Blade music. That was Primordial off of their most recent CD, Where Greater Men Have Fallen. The song was The Seed of Tyrants. Before that, we opened it up with brand new Job for a Cowboy. Off of their new CD, Sun Eater, the song was Buried Monuments. But it's time for some more digital dismemberment.
Digital dismemberment.
And in our final digital dismemberment spotlight for the evening, we are going to be covering one of the two George A. Romero classics that made their Blu-ray debuts on November 18th of this year. The two films are from the acclaimed director George A. Romero, and those two movies would be The Dark Half and Monkey Shines. Tonight, we're going to be covering Monkey Shines. Next week, we are going to be talking about The Dark Half. To give you a little bit of background info, Alan Mann is a bitter, angry, and vengeful man ever since an accident left him paralyzed from the neck down. He's fed up with himself and everyone around him. All that changes when he's given Ella, a monkey trained to meet his every need. But when Ella begins anticipating Alan's thoughts, strange and deadly things start happening. And as she stalks and wreaks havoc on Alan's fair-weathered girlfriend, incompetent doctor, and meddling mother, Alan realizes he must stop the cunning, maniacal creature before she fully takes over his mind. Monkey Shines stars Jason Begg, Janine Turner, Stanley Tucci, Kate McNeil, and you can order your copy now through ShotFactory.com. I have not seen this movie. I mean, I didn't see it exactly when it came out, but I saw it not long after it came out, and the movie still holds up to this day. There's something actually very scary about the thought of a killer monkey, especially a monkey that's trained to help people that are in bad shapes and paraplegics and things like that. It's really interesting when you look at some of the behind the scenes. The bonus features include a new audio commentary with George Romero. There's a new featurette, An Experiment in Fear, The Making of Monkey Shines, and that's an all-new retrospective with writer-director George Romero, actors Jason Begg, John Pankow, and Kate McNeil, executive producer Peter Grunwald, special makeup effects creator Tom Savini, special makeup effects assistants Greg Nicotero and Everett Burrell, and editor Pasquale Buva. It's about a 50-minute featurette, and it's really interesting to hear them talk about the concept of how they did the movie and all the things they needed to get done. In particular, it was really interesting listening to them talk about working with the monkeys. George makes jokes several times throughout the interview talking about how after 3 takes, the monkey would just kind of look at him like, I've done this 3 times, let's get on with it. And it was really interesting, especially when you listen to Nicotero and Burrell talking about the fake monkeys that they made, in particular for the end sequence of the film. The sculpt work was just absolutely stunning, and to see the real monkeys, kind of act along, or to see the sculptures was kind of interesting. The one monkey I don't know if the monkey perceived it as a threat, but it was certainly bouncy around the sculpture, and that was fun to watch. It was kind of an interesting concept that they talk about back then. Monkeys were definitely used for projects like that, and Romero called in specialists to make sure that things were right, and the acting of the monkeys and things like that. And it was funny how they talked about the one monkey being in heat, and how Jason Begg was the first one that the monkey had to see, so the monkey kind of had that that loving feeling, that sense of ownership over him for the film. And you can definitely see that the interaction between he and the monkey was something that they had to work really long and hard over. Some of the other things was an alternate ending, which I really thought brought another element. It would have been a little bit more of a twist ending. People can argue over the ending whether it was too friendly or should they have gone with the other one, which would have opened it up for a sequel. I could have gone either way. I mean, I did like the way it ended. It kind of ended on a high note considering the tone of the film, so I don't think it was a bad thing. There were 2 deleted scenes included as well. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes footage. A lot of that was attributed to Tom Savini recording behind the scenes, and a lot of that is like the test stuff with the monkey and just, getting pictures of the monkey and stock footage of the monkey for different scenes and shoots throughout the film. They have the original electronic press kit as well, which has the vintage making of Monkey Shines plus additional interview clips. You had the theatrical and TV spot trailers for the film. There was also a nice still gallery that came along with that. The movie is interesting. It definitely falls in the category of horror, but you could also look at it from the aspect of it being a suspense thriller type film. I thought the film was very capably acted. One of the things that's touched on in the behind the scenes, and I think is really conveyed really well throughout the film, is the lead actor basically having to act like he's a quadriplegic. And it's very easy to sit here and say, oh, it'd be easy to sit there in a chair and not move. But when you think about it from the perspective of how long a shoot is, not even thinking about, I can't scratch my head or, I can't move. Even the scene where he goes to fall out of the bed, he does such a great job not moving his body, and you really felt the tension of the nurse trying to keep him from staying in, trying to keep him in the bed instead of falling to the ground. The monkeys were absolutely amazing. You really did feel at times that the actors and actresses were actually threatened by the monkeys. Even the most well-intentioned of the friends who gave his friend who was in an accident, hit by the car and paralyzed, gives him the monkey with even the best of intentions. And it was interesting how it was touched upon, how the monkey kind of was getting into the guy's mind and kind of not really controlling but amplifying his thoughts and emotions, and the monkey acting out on that. The end of the film is a little shocking, in particular how it ends, how the threats are assessed and dealt with. So there's a lot of content there, and again, a lot of credit has to be given to the lead actor for being able to portray his role in the manner in which he did. As far as the movie goes, I would definitely give the movie about a 7 out of 10. Not quite on my blood spectrum or anything like that, but the suspense, the acting, and of course it being a George Romero film definitely makes it worth checking out. As far as the special features, the packaging, everything along that goes with the film, the overall disc rating would be an 8.5, 9 out of 10. Scream Factory, again, did a great job, especially with the new featurette, The Making of Monkey Shines, because it's really nice to hear them go back and talk about all the time and the effort and everything that went into the real monkeys, the fake monkeys, and all of the acting. Make sure to head on over to shoutfactory.com to pick up your copy directly from them. If not, head to your local retailer or head to your Amazon.com, anything like that. This is a great gift for Christmas, especially those that are George Romero fans and want to see one of the better films in his canon out on Blu-ray for the holiday season. So make sure to head on over and check that out as soon as you get a chance. It was another great show this evening. I want to say thank you so much to the writers from Living Dead magazine for coming on, Miss Mandible, and of course we had Amanda Rebholz, who, as she dropped the bombshell on us, is having a baby in July. So hopefully all goes well with that, and we hope to see her out at the Living Dead Convention in November. Also want to say thank you to Jesus Figueroa for coming on. I really like the writing cast and crew over there at Living Dead magazine. I'm looking forward to having some of the other writers on here in the future and having everyone on for that roundtable discussion. We want to say thank you to our friends out at Scream Factory, including Tom Chen in particular, for getting our copy of Monkey Shines out to us. And for next week's film to be reviewed, The Dark Half. Thank you to our friends out at Metal Blade for all of our podcast-exclusive music. And until next week, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Dead Man signing off, telling you all to rest in peace.